Hello everyone here and hello to people online. So that felt a little bit abrupt for me to come out of meditation and now suddenly have to speak. um, so what I'd like to do today is to bring in a perspective, an orientation on our life, on our practice, Buddhist practice, from another domain, another field. And that's often can be useful because it kind of, helps us to kind of see what we're doing in a new way, whether it's looking at our Buddhist practice in a new way or whether independent of that, almost looking at our own life in a new way. That's kind of the hope for this talk. And I like to think of what I'm going to point towards is the depth of the Dharma, but rather than thinking of the Dharma as something outside of you, it's the depth of your Dharma, or the depth that's potentially yours. How to understand yourself in some deep way. And the orientation I'm going to provide is a way, it's principles or a point of view that chaplains use when they offer spiritual care. Especially here in California, chaplains who work in hospitals are offering spiritual care to anybody who is willing to or wants to have care from them, including people who are atheists and non-religious. And chaplains are in California are even though there might be Buddhist or Christian or Jewish or Muslim chaplains, they're explicitly working in the hospital as an interfaith chaplain. So as an interfaith chaplain, you're not there to proselytize. You're not there to provide people with the meaning of life that you have from maybe your own religion. You're there to discover what's going on for that person in some deep way, understand them deeply. For example, in terms of the meaning of life, you might want to discover what is their understanding of the meaning of life, or in what way is the meaning of life for them been ruptured, and they're suffering. Maybe like in a hospital, they represent someone who's maybe going through some tremendous loss, sickness, old age, all kinds of things can happen with people in the hospital. And so it's ruptured maybe what was meaningful for them, what a meaningful life meant for them, being debilitated, maybe having their life radically changed overnight and never to be the same again. And so their sense of meaning has been ruptured. And so a chaplain is there to meet that and care for that without proselytizing, without providing them with meaning. So this idea that there's these orientations that chaplains use to understand people deeply so that they can support people deeply in times of great difficulty. And so there are 5 paired areas that chaplains are looking at considering people that I would like to kind of present here for us today. And as you listen, the thing I'm mostly interested in is to maybe it supports you to be able to or want to kind of look at yourself more deeply, to use these 5 categories to really look at how does this work for you, and not just your first answers for them, but there's the art of thinking, well, that's the first answer, but if that's true, what's deeper, what's more deeply true around the same category, and keep kind of going down deep. So I'll list what these 5 categories are, 5 areas. They're pairs of things. And don't try to memorize them now, because I'll go through them slowly, and you can always go back listening to the talk if you want to get all of them. But now just listen and see what kind of seems important for you for yourself. So the five pairs are meaning and purpose, agency and autonomy, identity and dignity, community and kinship, healing and reconciliation. And they're kind of, in a very interesting list, they're kind of progressive in some ways, or they could be seen that way. So the first, meaning and purpose. The big question is, what's the meaning of life? A subset of that is, what's the meaning of your life? And I would like to propose that everyone has some sense of what their meaning of their life is, whether it's implicit or explicit, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And many people receive a sense of meaning of life, what life is about, what's important in life to do, and from their society, from their religions, from their family, in such an early age that people don't even know they're living that way. It's just like, this is how things are. And I saw that with my children when they were quite young, that how much I was acculturating them to a certain point of view about what it means to be a human being, and what it means to be a human being in relationship to other human beings. At first I was a little bit horrified, to see how the conditioning we were doing, but it has to be this way. Everyone has to somehow, everyone who lives in a society, in a culture, has to some way or other have a language to speak with people. And we don't, then we communicate and find our way. And, it isn't that, this 2-year-old who's learning to speak, is being oppressed because, the way English words are spelled doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm one of those people who's complained for 60 years, 70 years about this, kind of in jest. But you just have to go along with certain things. So with English-speaking people, you can communicate. So things are passed on in a very early age, and I saw for myself as I started doing Buddhist practice that those layers of ways I was conditioned got uncovered. And how deeply it went, I can't tell you if it went all the way to the bottom, but I certainly saw a lot of ways. And that's why I so see it so well, what I was doing for my children. And so I was conscious of it, but I tried to do it responsibly and carefully and not to limit them. But still, I knew that you had to teach them language, you had to teach them how to be in a culture and in a certain way. And so what's the meaning of life? Some people, the meaning of life, as I said, and like in hospitals, but not many places, is unfulfilled. They think that life has a certain meaning, like to have children. And some women, some people don't have children, and their meaning is really ruptured. It's really painful because they grew up with that. That was their primary purpose, in a sense. For other people, it was to fulfill their parents' ideas of what kind of career they're going to have. And that was the primary meaning which operated in their life. Some people, without it being called the meaning of their life, it's, if you watch them, you say, wow, from all I can tell, the meaning of their life is to hate. That's all there seems to be about. And or the meaning of life is to be wealthy, to have desires and to have status. And that seems to be what their life is about. But it's unexamined. And if you ask them, what's the meaning of your life, they might not be able to say anything deeper than that. That's the operating principle of what their life is about. But is the meaning of life to live in resentment? Is that what life should be really about? The purpose, and so meaning and purpose are closely related many times. So the meaning gives us the orientation of what we want to do with our life, what we want to accomplish. So, is life just about becoming wealthy? Is it more about the quality of our relationships, that there's love and community and that we support and are engaged in? Is life about feeling fulfilled in some deep inner way that has nothing to do with material well-being and status and these kinds of things? And so, what's the meaning? What's the purpose? And people who have no purpose sometimes find themselves disoriented, feel lost, feel like they don't fit into society, don't fit into this world. They're confused. Sometimes they're depressed by it all. Some people who think something of a particular is meaningful in a particular way, but they can't fulfill that meaning. Again, it's very challenging for them. Some people have a meaning that they thought was the purpose of life, but something happened that pulled the rug from underneath that, and they can't fulfill it, or it doesn't make sense anymore. Some people, their religion they grew up with provided meaning, and amazing meaning. The people, community people, their whole meaning of life was centered around the meaning provided by their religion. But at some point, they could no longer believe it or follow that, and then they were lost. Like, what do I do now? How do I find my way? So chaplains in offering spiritual care are listening for this. And they're not proselytizing, they're not telling people what it should be. Now, as a Buddhist teacher, I'm not a chaplain in that way. So for better or for worse, I'm offering Buddhist meaning and Buddhist purpose. But often what I try to do when I meet with people is one-on-one, is to listen first and foremost what the people I'm talking to want. What is their intention for their life? And then see how this practice can support that in the appropriate way. And the exception for that is I'm also listening for suffering. How's this person suffering? And do I have a role to be a mirror for that, or engage them around that, and to support them around that? Because some sources of meaning, some orientations around meaning and purpose, cause just more suffering for themselves and maybe for other people as well. And that's one of the purposes, primary meanings that I think Buddhism offers. And that is that one purpose of human life is find liberation or freedom from suffering. This can seem to be not so grand or altruistic or something that other meanings could be. But it's a powerful one for Buddhists, the liberation from the freedom from suffering. And it's not the end of it all, but there might be more meanings to it. For example, you could ask, well, that's nice for you. And when your suffering ends, then what? What's the meaning of life then? And some Buddhists will say, then, the meaning of life is to help you end your suffering, or to help end suffering for other people. Because part of the meaning for life is that we are related to each other, and our well-being, our purpose in life is also related to the well-being of those around us. The purpose of Buddhist life is not just to end suffering, which seems like a neutral thing. It's also to thrive in a very deep way. And the Buddha didn't use exactly the word thrive because he didn't speak English. But there are other words that he used that are related to what we mean by the word thrive, to live in a sense of abundance, expansiveness. And so the purpose of life is to free this inner possibility. From a Buddhist point of view, it's the Dharma. We want to live in harmony with the Dharma, aligned with the Dharma. But the Dharma is not in a book. The Dharma is something that lives inside of us. And Buddhists, since in the West we often say that we want to, it's the idea of a power, power greater than ourselves, something, we want to be aligned to a higher power is a kind of language some people use. I think the Buddhists would say something like, I would say, yes, that's great. We do, but the higher power that we can find is within ourselves. So it's not exactly us, it's not exactly you, but it's not apart from you, but it's this inner movement of something that can happen when something is set free. Set free from what? Set free from all the restrictions that we live under, all the limitations we put ourselves under. And so this movement towards freedom from suffering is a movement that sees and feels how we limit ourselves, how we restrict ourselves, how we oppress ourselves, because that's suffering. And so to begin seeing and feeling, oh, look at that. Not only am I suffering, but I can feel how this is a limitation to my growth. I see how this is not to my growth, but just limitation to how life wants to grow, how life wants to be expressed. The Dharma wants to be expressed here. And this thing, that higher power that's within us, is our own maturation, or this inner maturation, growth, set free, that we're amazingly capable of, to live with tremendous sense of peace, of joy, of strength, of wisdom, that it's very hard to take personally. And so, so this idea of being free from then limitations and restrictions ties into the next chaplaincy orientation, and that is agency and autonomy. And this means that we're not living under oppression, not living under things that keep us in certain kinds of prison, restricted. Autonomy means that, in this context, is that other people you're not controlled by other people. You're not controlled by institutions that have greater power over your life than they should have. You're not coerced into living the way you want to live. You are not oppressed. But you can make your own choices. You can follow your own guidance to what you want to do. The representation of that represents this kind of restricted life is prison. That it's awful to be in prison. So much of the autonomy is taken away explicitly. And I've met prisoners who have all this kind of ordinary autonomy taken away, and they have more inner freedom than many people who come to IMC. It's remarkable to see where they find their autonomy. Autonomy about what their inner life is about, what they choose to respond to and how they respond. And they found a certain kind of freedom to make choices for themselves that you can see and feel, look in their eyes and see what they have. And so this idea, agency, the ability to act, to not be restricted from doing what needs to be done. So for Buddhists, to have some sense, yes, it's possible to be free. It's possible to let this Dharma, onward leading Dharma, move through me and grow. It's possible to open my heart in such a way that I can be of service to others or love others, or be connected in a deep way. It's possible, but I can't do it. Why can't I do it? Well, I have responsibilities. I can't go on a retreat. I have, to read the newspaper and have coffee in the morning. I can't meditate. I have no autonomy. And then of course, so there's these things that keep us in check, and so we don't feel like we can do what we want to do. And some people have responsibilities and families, and some people feel like they can't practice because they can't go on retreat because of family responsibilities. And I tell them, well, I learned maybe more about myself and the Dharma with the limitations of raising kids than I did in monasteries I lived in. It's a great practice. And in terms of learning autonomy, learning agency, and where it really counts, for me, I learned a tremendous amount under the limitations of parenting. That I wouldn't say it's like prison, but but I do want to refer back to what I just said about these prisoners who found the freedom, right? So if the prisoners can do it in that setting, maybe I could learn something about it in family, maybe. So we have purpose. We have a meaning and purpose, and then agency and autonomy. And then we have identity and dignity. One of the ways that I understand chaplains is that one of their functions of these hospital chaplains, or any chaplain, I hope, any human being, I hope, is, I've coined a new English word, because I believe English gives us that freedom. Sometimes I have loving arguments with friends about this. You can't do that. Chaplains are dignifiers. You see, I have enough autonomy and agency that I can make up a new word. Dignifiers. And so they dignify other people. They bring out the dignity in people and respect them and honor them and value them. People in our society, not enough people in our society are honored, are respected in deep ways. And sometimes when people are under challenge, like in tremendous difficulty in hospitals, their dignity has been taken away. And chaplains come, and that's one of the things chaplains offer. Identity and dignity, identity and worth. And identity is a kind of an awkward thing for Buddhists to talk about, sometimes, unfortunately, because there's been a long history of this teachings of no self, and you're not supposed to have an identity, let go of identity, let go. And it's true, there's a tremendous amount of letting go of self-definition, of holding on to ideas of self that Buddhists do, but only when the practice shows us that the identities we're living under restrict us, limit us. Some identities don't do that. Some identities actually do the opposite, that kind of give us more space. So someone who calls themselves, identifies, I'm a Buddhist practitioner, well, if they come and tell me that as a Buddhist teacher, I say, great. I'm not going to take that away from you. That teaches me, it tells me that you have certain values and purpose and meaning for your life, of what you want to do and with your life that I want to support. And if there's some attachment to being the practitioner, then I'm not worried about it, because the practice, the mindfulness, the Dharma will show you sooner or later where those limitations are. And so it all comes out in the wash. But identity is very important. Identity means you know where your place is in society. You know how you fit in society, how to find your way in society. You know your place in your family. You know your role. And roles are maybe sometimes like hats you wear, you take on and off. But still, you know what hats you're wearing at any given time. You know something about yourself. You know yourself well. You have confidence in yourself. You have understanding of what makes you work. You understand what drives you, your values, your meanings, your purposes. You have a clear sense of how you live in relationship to other people, and how to interact with it, and how to care for yourself in relationship to other people. All this fits under the title of identity. And many people are deeply challenged around identity. Some people are challenged when the identity they had seemingly has been removed from them or lost, so some people, when they retire, feel completely lost because that role, that identity is no longer there. And so chaplains listen. Where is that? Where is that the suffering that people have, and how do I care for that and meet that, and support people? I can't provide to anybody with identity, but a chaplain listens to the suffering, at least, that's there, and then sees what can support this person to find a new identity, what can support the person to let go of the identities that have been harmful for them, that are no longer needed. So, meaning and purpose, agency and autonomy, identity and dignity. And Buddhism is a lot about dignity. Some of you know that the people who attain some degree of liberation in Buddhism are called the noble ones. That's kind of highlights. So this is an important movement, direction we're going. And then there's community and kinship. And I think for most people, we understand how important community is: family, friends, our tribe, our village, the people around us that help, our mirrors to help us understand ourselves, people who help us feel like we belong, that we're connected, that we're not alone. Many of the ways in which we as human beings grow and develop as children is clearly in relationship to other people, clearly in relationship to our parents. And we're wired for that relationship to affect us for a lifetime. And if something goes askew with a parent-child relationship when the child is young, it can be challenging for that child the rest of their life. We call it sometimes attachment disorders nowadays. And if something goes well in that relationship, the child feels secure in the world by feeling security in their family in the first 5 years they're alive, then they feel, oh, the world is a place it's okay to feel secure in. And so it makes a huge difference. And so, we learn from each other, we influence each other, we're influenced by each other, it touches something very deep inside of us. When I was walking down here to teach today, and somewhat near my house is a house that I've walked by a lot, and it's been being remodeled for years. And it feels like almost like it's a hobby house for someone, or they seem to work on the weekends or evenings, and they come with all their buddies. It seems like just a nice time, and they seem to be doing a really nice job at this relatively small wooden house. So I've kind of admired what they're doing, but this morning there was someone with a pickup truck, kind of looked like they were going to do some work or something, and so the first time I said hello, I said, "Are you working here?" And the person was a little bit cautious. Yeah, sometimes. So I said, well, I've been admiring this for years, and it turned out that he was the owner, and he's been doing it for years, and so we had a delightful conversation. I appreciated his work. I really appreciated how nice they'd done the house, and appreciated his work and what he did. And then finally he asked me, "What do you do?" So that's a little bit of a personal question, right? And so I thought, well, what do I say? What is this? Because sometimes when I've told people what I do here in Redwood City, like when Little League with my kids, they're the Little League parents, as soon as I tell them, they walk away. Buddhist teacher, right? Or something. So I said I'm a meditation teacher, because that's a little bit safer. I could say I'm in entertainment. And so when I said I'm a meditation teacher, he was like, "Wow," said, "So I can't. You must sit still, or something." And so we talked for a while, and it was kind of nice. And I told him that I'd been a Buddhist monk for many years, and he said, "You really must know how to be still. I can't sit at all. I have to always be active." And I said, "Yeah, I can be still, but I love activity too. It's doing this kind of work you do is so much fun, and it's engaging, and I love it to do that kind of work. And I used to be a farmer," I said, and so what was I doing in that conversation? So a number of things were happening: community and kinship. First one that happened was I was walking down the street, and I saw this man there, and I thought, well, I can't stop and talk to him. I want to come down here and be here early at IMC so that I can be in community and kinship with some of you. But I could feel that the resistance I had to stopping, the sense of like there's some other place to go, didn't feel right. That's where the suffering was. That's where the strain was. I didn't want to live with that. That didn't seem right. So what happens when I let go of it? "Hi, are you working on this house or something?" I just felt like the most natural thing in the world, and that was the person of the moment to be in community with and kinship with. There was some commonality, perhaps, because of seeing that house for years, thinking about it. Just, he's only about 10 houses away from me. And so it's part of my neighborhood. And So is that the meaning of life for me to connect to people in community? I don't know if I would say that. Is it the Dharma in me that's coming forth and being expressed? I would say yes. That's just life coming forth in me. And then I was in community with him. And then I felt kinship with him. When he said he's, has a trouble sitting still, but he likes being active, I loved it. I thought that's a beautiful thing. I felt more connected to him, and it's kind of kinship. And I wanted to share that sense of kinship with him, with the sense that I too like to be active and to do work. And it felt wonderful to have that wonderful connection. So by the time I was ready to leave, he offered me his hand to shake it. And it was felt a wonderful little contact there, and a little friendly engagement. And so community and kinship is something that is a wonderful part of human life. And that gets ruptured sometimes. It gets broken. It gets challenged. And each of these 5 areas relate to each other. They influence each other or connect to each other. And each of these 5, any one of these 5 areas can be broken for people, can be challenged, could be deficient in people's lives. Each of these 5 areas are ways in which Buddhist practice comes alive for us. One of the answers to the question, what's the meaning of life, is, I would say from a Buddhist point of view, the meaning of life is to be alive, is to live. And why that's a significant answer, and rather than kind of avoiding the question, is that Buddhists, when we do this meditation practice, we understand intimately, personally, acutely, how much we block our life, how much we restrict our living, how attachments, how clinging, how fear, resentment, even desires that we have actually limit us. Rather than having unfettered desires to use your credit card as much as you want, is actually a limitation. To be the most wealthiest person in this planet and live just for that purpose, probably it means a truncated life. Something is blocked and restricted. And anyway, whether that's true or not, we can, to the degree to which we interfere with our life being lived fully and freely, that's something we can feel. What happens when our life is being lived fully? It's then we can feel like this is good. This is being alive in a way that's satisfying and deeply meaningful. I don't know if it's a study or whether it's a thought experiment, but I've read about comparing 2 people on an assembly line doing the same mundane assembly line routine. One person is bored. And the bored person, their life energy gets drained from them. The other person sees it as a game, how fast they can do it, how well they can do it, and just completely absorbed in doing it, and enters into a flow state. And a flow state is a state of well-being, of joy, of engagement, of self dropping away in a certain way. And it just feels so good to be in the state. It doesn't matter that it's a mundane, boring activity from the external point of view. Just being alive is so great. So this idea of the purpose of life is to be alive works if you believe that the Dharma, our deep self, has wisdom and love and care and community as part of it. And that's what we can discover when we do this practice. In fact, there's a tremendous resource within us that can provide us with meaning, agency, identity, dignity, community, kinship, and the last one, healing and reconciliation. So some people, that's their primary need at chaplaincy, in the hospital or other places, that all the other needs are what they are, but the limiting factor for the person is healing and reconciliation. and something is broken. So, and healing is usually with reconciliation was with other people. Healing is with something else, with oneself, or with what one takes as being the purpose of life, or the meaning of life, or that which is ultimate and sacred. And so that's the task. Mindfulness can have a powerful role for that. Mindfulness is a healing movement. To feel and see where the break is, and allow the Dharma to move through us in such a way that a tremendous amount of healing can happen from the Dharma being allowed to move through us. The heart knows how to heal. And so we're allowing that heart to heal through this practice. So I'll go through name them again. Maybe as I name them this time, why don't you see if any one of them might be kind of the one that's more interesting for you to spend time considering. Meaning and purpose, agency and autonomy, identity and dignity, community and kinship, healing and reconciliation. We could say these are needs we all have. And is any one of them a need that is more, you say, oh, today, that's the one that seems up for me. Or it's just the whole catastrophe. So thank you for listening to this. And I hope this kind of gave you a different perspective, especially those of you who've been coming, listening to these talks, Buddhist talks for a long time. It's a new perspective to kind of look at yourself with, and maybe to have conversations with friends. So in about 7 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, there'll be this potluck. You're all here, welcome to attend, and even whether you brought something or not, it doesn't really, please don't feel like you can't stay if you didn't bring something, because that's not the kind of potluck we're at. It just maybe bring yourself. And since we're doing a potluck, maybe it'd be nice for you to say hello to people here, just to break the ice a little bit. And maybe just say hello, and then you can go to say hello to someone, or maybe find out a little bit more about them. Or maybe tell them which of these, what you thought of this talk in terms of your own life, or which one of these 5 bears was most interesting for you, or something, as you wish. But if you can kind of turn to 2 people next to you so that no one's kind of left alone, kind of looking, well, who's going to talk to me? So, thank you.